Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Kayla Hornbrook. I'm with Alexandria Housing Development Corporation. Just a few things that I want to get through before we kind of get into the meat of this presentation, this Q&A session about leasing, about renting, about Parkview, and learning all about the affordable rental process. Just to start off, this session is being recorded. If you raise your hand to speak with your voice out loud at any point during this session, your name and your question will be recorded in that way. If you submit a question via the Q&A in the chat, it will not be. We will read those out without sharing your name. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that. If you, over the course of this presentation, have a question that you want to ask, if you have an issue, I wanted to let you know about the buttons at the bottom of the Zoom screen that can help you do that. So you'll have a button that says raise your hand. At the end of this session, if you have a raised hand, I will allow you to, I'll give it the Zoom function is called allow to talk. So I will do allow to talk for you so you can ask your question out loud. If you would prefer to send in a written question, we ask that you use this Q&A box. That way the questions can be visible to the other people who are in the program in case they have a similar question to you and want to share it as well. You can also use the chat box, but we like to try to reserve the chat box for kind of like technical difficulty issues so we can keep an eye on things separately from each other. So just wanted to let you know that these are the different ways that you can participate and ask a question. As well, you may see that captions are currently running. I just want to point out that captions are automatically generated and may not be 100% accurate. We will, at the end of this webinar and over the course of the next week, post the questions, the Q&A, the captions, the video on our website. We'll go through it with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that everything is actually correct. So I just wanted to let you know that the captions sometimes do make mistakes, but we think it's a useful feature, so we like to run it anyway. And then just one last personal note. My daughter has the flu, and so if at any point I just kind of start hacking away, she's with her dad, so she should be okay, but just beg your space and forgiveness. So like I said, my name is Kayla Hornbrook. I'm with Alexandria Housing Development Corporation. Also on this call helping me today is Ileana Galeas, who is with SL Nusbaum. She is the manager over at Parkview and is an expert on leasing and all things about the process and the qualifications, and also just an expert on all things Parkview. So
I appreciate the intro, Kayla.
Yeah.
Thank you. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm an expert, but good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be here and assist you with any questions you may have.
Thanks, Ileana. So those who the two of us are individually, but I wanted to just go ahead and get started by explaining who we are kind of corporately. So Alexandria Housing Development Corporation, we are an independent housing nonprofit. We are a 501c3 charitable organization, and we support households that make roughly between 40 to 80% of the area median income. We will explain everything about area median income later if it's unfamiliar to you, but I just wanted to kind of share the range of incomes that we support. And then we work with SL Nusbaum. They provide the leasing team services. So if you go into one of the buildings that AHDC owns and you talk to a leasing team agent, they will be with SL Nusbaum, but we are working together. We're all part of the same team and moving in the same direction, but that might be why sometimes you see slightly different email addresses depending on who you're talking to. Who we are not. So AHDC is not ARHA. We are not an agency of the city. We are not public housing. So I'd like to kind of start off with this because it can be confusing. AHDC is 4 letters. It starts with A. ARHA is also 4 letters. It starts with A. We work in very similar spaces, but we are not the same organization. ARHA tends to serve households that make less than 40% AMI, very generally speaking. We work closely with ARHA when it comes to certain housing issues, and we have contacts with the City Office of Housing as well. Great folks over there. Nothing bad to say, just we are not them. And so I wanted to make sure that off the bat, we define that a little bit because it'll come up later too, but we know that it can be confusing since those names and those letters and those acronyms are just so close to each other. To give you a picture of where AHDC works, here's a map of all of our different locations. Right now, Parkview of Alexandria, which we'll be showing off later, is up here in the northern Arlandria Chiricahua neighborhood. Here you can see our other locations as well, this being Braddock Road Metro, King Street Metro, Eisenhower, and Van Dorn Metro, TC Williams High School, the old Landmark Mall site. Rather than kind of going through each of these individually, the thing I want to point out here is that we only work inside the city of Alexandria. So AHDC as a nonprofit does not work outside of Alexandria. We don't work in Fairfax County, even the parts of Fairfax County that call itself Alexandria. We don't work in DC, we don't work in Falls Church, we don't work in Arlington. We are very committed to working inside the city of Alexandria and becoming the local subject matter experts on how to do all things housing inside the city of Alexandria. So just to get started, talking into the leasing process, how to lease up with AHDC, how to lease up, I mean, this slide in particular kind of relates to leasing up anywhere or trying to purchase a house anywhere, but I want to get started and put the umbrella over this entire conversation. When we talk about getting into housing, getting into rental units, purchasing homes, I want to make sure that everybody understands that they have rights underneath the Fair Housing Act. So this act designates a certain amount of protected classes. That means that if you have membership in one of these classes, that membership cannot be used against you in the pursuit of housing. So in the state of Virginia, these protected classes are race, color, religion, national origin, sex, elderliness, familial status, disability, source of funds, sexual orientation and gender identity, and military status. Just to explain a few of those a little bit further, some of them are obvious, but familial status means that you cannot be denied housing for having children under 18 unless the facility is a designated senior or retirement facility. Occupancy standards still can be applied. You cannot have more than 2 people per bedroom, for example, or whatever the local or specific unit regulations might be, but you can't be denied housing simply for having children. Source of funds is another one that I want to point out. In Virginia, you can't be denied housing based on where the money for your rent or mortgage comes from. This is most typically in relation to a housing choice voucher or a Section 8 voucher. You cannot be denied housing for using those resources to pay for your housing. I'm happy to explain on any of the others if they come up at all during the Q&A session, but I just wanted to highlight those two. AHDC and SL Nusbaum, we receive fair housing training. We believe in the letter and the spirit of the law. It's very important to us as a mission-oriented housing developer. We think that, you know, in addition to being the right thing to do, it's the equitable thing to do. It's the way to provide housing in the city that really meets everybody's needs. So we just wanted to say, if you ever feel like you have been discriminated against in the pursuit of any housing, you can certainly reach out to and discuss that with folks at the city, folks at the state, say, hey, I don't think this was right. City of Alexandria in particular has a landlord-tenant relationship office. They are very familiar with fair housing law. And so if you reach out to them to discuss your situation, they will let you know how to move forward. So now that I've explained the Fair Housing Act, the question of the hour, do I qualify for tax credit housing, or do I qualify for affordable housing, or do I qualify for housing with AHDC? So what I'm going to work through in this presentation is kind of just the process of how we figure out if you can live in one of our properties. The leasing team, SL Nusbaum, and the compliance officer with SL Nusbaum are ultimately the ones that determine if you qualify. However, you can take a few steps ahead of time to figure out if you may or may not have the appropriate income, if you've got other issues that you need to address or look out for in the course of leasing. There are 3 main things worth pointing out here. When you are moving into a tax credit property or an affordable housing property like AHDCs, you have to be not over the maximum income, not under the minimum income, and you need to be able to pass credit and criminal background checks. I'm going to go through each of these. So we're going to start with maximum income. Your income is considered a percentage of the area median income. And so every AHDC unit will have a maximum percentage of the area median income that's allowed for that unit. I'm going to walk through this as best I can. Again, apologies for the scratchy throat. So, for example, if you want to rent a unit that is called a 60% AMI unit, that means that you cannot make more than the 60% AMI threshold for your household size. So in the Washington, DC metro region, there's a number that's considered the middle income number for households, depending on household size. And then we go from that number and we break it down into different groups. So if we say this is the 100% AMI, there's 30%, 40%, 50%, 60%, 80% AMI. This will be on the next slide. And so when we take our units and we put them out on the market, each unit is assigned one of those brackets. These limits, by the way, are established by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. This is a federal agency that examines this every year. They update these numbers every year in April. This is not something that we control. This is something that is part of the housing program provided federally. It cannot be changed. So what are the AMI maximum income limits? In 2022, in April, these were the maximum income limits that were established by household size and by income bracket size for the Washington, Alexandria, Arlington metro region. Basically anything inside the Beltway and anything around the Beltway, up to Maryland, down to, down into Springfield. Like, this is all the Washington, DC metro. So you can see the 100% AMI category here. This is considered the middle number of income for everybody who lives in the Washington, DC metro region, by 1-person household, 2-person household, 3-person, and so on. And then here's the 30% AMI bracket, the 40% AMI bracket, the 50%, 60, and then the 80s. And I'll explain the 80s in just a second, but this is a lot of numbers. I think some of you might be taking pictures or screenshotting this. I just wanted to point out that you can also find this on our website at housingalexandria.org/looking to rent. We will also be sending these slides out to everybody who registered for this webinar after the fact. So no need to like pull out a pen and paper and scribble it all down. We will make sure that this information gets to you. So just use that practical example, going back, saying you want to rent a 60% AMI unit. Let's say you're a household of 3 people and the unit that you're looking at is a 60% AMI unit. We take our left finger and we put it on the number 3. We take our right finger and we put it on the number 60%. And we drag and find where those two meet. So if you're a household of 3 people and you want that 60% AMI unit, your maximum income can be $76,860 for the entire household. And this is gross, not net. So this is before taxes, not after taxes. This information, by the way, is not something that you need to know off the top of your head. Whenever you speak to a leasing agent, they'll be able to provide it for you. But we wanted to show you the information so that way you could see what we're doing behind the scenes and you could use this information for yourself as well. So now that we've talked about maximum income, let's talk about minimum income. So AHDC requests that applicants demonstrate an income that is roughly 2.5 to 3 times the price of rent. Why? When we build these communities, our goal and our hope is that folks who move into them can stay in them for the long term. They can build family stability, they can build connections, they could stay put through good seasons, through bad seasons, that they're not at risk of eviction. So in order to ensure that folks are going to be able to stay and that we are not going to be a burden to their budget, we want to see that roughly 2.5 to 3 times the price of rent, either on the monthly or the annual mathematical calculation. We understand that circumstances can change without warning. So when you live within AHDC properties, we do have eviction prevention assistance programs. We have other emergency supports that we can help activate. So in the event that something happens and your minimum income changes, we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that you can stay in your unit in the event that something, changes in your life and something happens. As an example, during the COVID pandemic, we are very proud to say that we didn't lose a single resident from our rolls due to the inability to pay caused by COVID. We worked very hard to make sure that everybody had access to the resources from the state and the city that could help them stay put. And we're very committed to seeing that through. And in this post-COVID environment, we're still very committed to making sure that people can stay when circumstances change and they didn't control them. So lastly, the credit and criminal background checks. So we do this in the same vein as making sure that people are going to be able to stay when they move in. We want to make sure that when people move into one of our communities, that they're going to be able to stay and that they're going to be safe. So the criminal background check is just to ensure that you can live safely with communities of children, with communities of seniors, and making sure that we don't have to worry about with folks who are living in our communities feeling threatened or feeling unsafe. Credit check also comes in. This is in order to ensure that you will be able to stay once you move in. Now, there are instances wherein, let's say if you had a medical debt and something like medical debt has really hurt your credit, we are very willing to talk about that. We're very willing to look at that situation a little bit more closely, particularly if you're working with agencies that can help assist with credit rebuilding, or if you're working with folks who are addressing what happened to you. Maybe it was like identity fraud issues. We can be an open door in those moments and in those conversations. So now that we've gone through these things that we check, how do we check them? This is the documentation portion of the process. So we're going to use documentation to prove your income and to prove your household size. So for affordable housing, for renting and leasing with an AHDC community, income is any money or benefit regularly received, paid to, or accrued to the household, except for SNAP benefits and any wages earned by minors. So, there's the kind of very standard, if you work for giant grocery stores and you receive a paycheck, that's income, that's very familiar to people. But let's say you also provide babysitting services to your neighbor, and your neighbor pays you a few $100s a month in order to, watch their children. That is also income. And so I'm going to go through a few of the different ways that we check and look at income, but I just want to be sure that this is anything that regularly comes into the household. This is a HUD rule in order to ensure that tax credit programs and the affordable apartments that we built continue to meet that need and serve that mission. We do have to check income. This is not something that we can get around. This is something that's very important to making sure that there's no fraud in the tax credit system. It is a non-negotiable when you're moving into one of these units. So what paperwork do I need to prove income? Every situation is unique. When you apply, a leasing consultant like Ileana or any of the other folks at SL Nusbaum will be able to walk you through your own individual situation and identify what sort of documentation you need. Generally speaking, here's what we're looking for. Every household, if you have a bank account or other financial accounts, will want to see the last 6 months of those statements. So this is something that if you are with Wells Fargo, you can log online and see. You can reach out to, if you've got connections there, to ask them for assistance with that sort of thing, but it'll be bank and financial account statements for the last 6 months. Households with employed adults, this is your 6 most recent pay stubs for salary and wages and documentation of any other income you receive. So with the babysitting example earlier, if you do regularly receive a few $100s to help babysit your neighbors, this might mean that we need a notarized letter from the person who's paying you that money. We can talk about how to write up that letter, what needs to be in it. The leasing team definitely can guide you through that process, but we'll need just some sort of documentation that shows that this is what this source of funds is. If you work for Uber, if you work for one of those kind of contracting companies, there's, I'm not incredibly personally familiar with it, but there's a pretty routine pattern for what sort of documentation we want to see from those companies as well. Leasing agents are very familiar with it and can walk you through that. As well, if you're self-employed, let the leasing agents know. And sometimes with self-employed, if you run your own business, we're talking about looking at your tax returns from the previous year. If you receive any sort of benefit, so this is Social Security, disability pay, Veterans Affairs, unemployment, alimony, pensions, retirement income, rental income, or any other sort of support program, we want to see proof of the amount that you believe you will receive over the next 12 months. So this is statements from those agencies. Let's say if a church is supporting you with rental assistance, we'll want to see a letter from the church showing what they expect to give you over the next 12 months if it's regular income. Any alimony, if it's a court order or something that can show where this income is coming from over the course of the next year. Child support, we'll get to that in a second, also sits in this category as well. Lastly, households with children. We're going to want to see birth certificates of the children or other proof of age, school records, doctor records, things that can show how old the children are, so that way we know they're minors or not minors. Foreign birth certificates are A-OK. However, we may or may not need translation assistance depending on the language that the birth certificate came in. The leasing team will be able to tell you. Our leasing teams are multilingual. There's a lot of different languages spoken, but we want to just make sure that we are reading and interpreting things correctly if we don't have that language on our staff. Court orders for any children not born to you who live with you, if applicable. So we just want to see that those children actually reside within your household, that they are a part of your household on the regular basis. And then proof of child support, if applicable, as this is income. If you receive court-ordered child support, we'd love to see that statement. If it is an arrangement set between you and the other parent, we may ask for a letter from the other parent, potentially a notarized letter from the other parent. Ileana, any other things that I've missed here? Oh, it looks like Ileana is reconnecting the audio. So I'm going to keep moving forward, but if she wants to come back in and get my flu-addled brain back on track, let me know. All right, so another question that we very frequently receive is, do you guys have a wait list? And I want to be clear that generally speaking, AHDC does not currently do any wait lists. We have an interested renters list that we send emails every month to folks on the interested renters list. This is not a wait list. This is not first come, first serve. Hey, did I pop out?
It was me. I apologize.
Oh,
I'm so
okay.
sorry.
I'm just-
I saw the captions and I just couldn't hear the sound. I have no idea what happened. I do apologize for that. But you did have a question for me about any of the information. I didn't see you missed anything there.
Okay, great. I'm gonna keep rolling through then. I think my internet's still very well connected. If not, send a pigeon, I guess. I'm so dependent on the internet now. First come, first serve or wait list. So a big reason why we currently don't operate any sort of formalized wait list for our existing properties is because circumstances change so frequently. We find that when we have wait lists, oftentimes we will go through, dozens up to potentially hundreds of names where people are like, oh, I was on the wait list, but I've moved or I've found housing. And we maybe miss the person who actually could use that unit at that time. We are exploring systems that can improve this process, that can potentially move us towards something like a waitlist process in the future. I'm not saying that we won't ever have a waitlist. In the event that that changes, it will be very well communicated. We will put out information on our website, we'll send it out in emails, we'll talk with our community partners and let people know that we're changing our process. But right now, our existing communities are first come, first serve. Where it may be confusing is that when we have a new rental property, one that's leasing up for the very first time, we do use a waitlist system. So this is when hundreds of units are coming online all at the same time. It could otherwise be very difficult to sort through all the folks who are interested. It could lead to all sorts of, there's a lot of interest and a lot of demand. We don't want to prioritize people who were able to take off on a Monday morning. We want to make sure that everybody's getting a fair shot at these units. So in those moments, we do use a waitlist system. This waitlist system is a randomized lottery system. So when you apply on that waitlist, after the application period has closed, we just take everybody, shuffle them completely randomly, and then assign them a contact order. And when we are going through that contact order, we let you know where you are in the contact list, where we are, and making our way through the list. So that way you can kind of have an understanding of how that waitlist process is going. Like I said, we only do this right now for when we have new communities coming online with hundreds of units all at the same time. The next time we think that this will happen will be either in late 2023 or early 2024 for our development in Alexandria, Chiricahua. So when that happens, again, we will communicate it as broadly and as widely as we can. We want as many people to have an opportunity to join that waitlist system in that time. But again, late 2023 or early 2024. If you are asking if one of your questions is like, I've submitted information to you, I want to know where I am on the waitlist process. Typically, when we receive those communications, they're actually meant for ARHA. Because right now, again, we don't have a waitlist system for any of our existing rental properties. So how do I learn about vacancies otherwise when I'm not in this initial brand new apartment building lease-up system? We always recommend that you call the property that you're interested in directly. The leasing teams at these properties are the up-to-the-minute experts on what's available and what's not. They're the folks who can tell you and say, somebody actually just put in their notice to vacate an hour ago. So, you want to reach out to the property and let them know that you're interested and see what availabilities they have, because these things can move very quickly. If you're not sure if you're looking to move just yet, if you're not like hoping that a unit will be available in 3 months, we also want to point out that we have a looking to rent email list. This is on our website. We will send out the link to everybody in the call at the end of this call. Many of you learned about this webinar through the looking to rent email list as well. So what this is once a month, AHDC, that's me at the headquarters level, we take a snapshot of all of the vacancies within our portfolio, and we send this out to the looking to rent email list. So once a month, we publicize the vacancies that we have, and let people know at what communities and at what income brackets and at what rents. I have a picture of what this looked like in our October newsletter coming up, so hopefully that'll help clear it up a little bit too. But again, this is just a once a month snapshot, since frequently unit movement is so fluid. Sometimes somebody puts in a notice to vacate, and before it even updates in the system, we have another person who's interested in moving into that unit. So it's just a snapshot in a moment in time that kind of shows where we have vacancies in the system. You don't have to wait for that to come out. You don't have to wait for that once a month email. If you're interested and you want to move now, always call the property directly, walk in and see them, or send them an email as well. But reaching out and letting the leasing team know you're interested is the most efficient way to get there. How is rent determined? So this is a big question that we get very frequently. Why is rents not 30% of my income? It is because we are not ARHA, we are not public housing. We are an affordable housing nonprofit. We are tax credit properties. So because we fit into that category, rents are fixed numbers, not a percentage of your income like ARHA, not a percentage of your income like senior housing. There's an upper limit to what this rent can be that's established by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. As part of the tax credit program, we have to have a limit on what the rents can be, and these are always below market rate. Frequently, our rents are actually less than the limit that is established by HUD. This can depend on certain market conditions. It can also vary property to property. We often have minor discrepancies based on like what the water bills at certain properties are. So not every unit is going to have the exact same rent. They're just all going to be beneath this upper limit that's established by HUD. These rents support the ongoing maintenance of our communities. We don't receive any public subsidy to help with maintenance issues or any kind of ongoing upkeep of our buildings. So we do have to rely on these things to help us repair ventilation systems and support laundry facilities and to create those property and community updates as well. So that is why our rent is not a percentage of your income as it is with ARHA and senior housing. However, I do want to take a moment here to say that if you are using support from ARHA, like the Section 8 voucher, or the federal government, like the housing choice vouchers, if you're bringing in those supports, we do apply those to your rent. So it's, if you have other rental income support, that may lower the effective rent that you are paying, but the floor or the rent is attached to the unit itself. So moving on to the next slide. Here is the looking to rent snapshot that we sent out in October. Our next looking to rent snapshot will go out next week, most likely. We have an event happening on the day, so probably, Thursday of next week, maybe Wednesday of next week. The next looking to rent snapshot will go out. It always contains a table like the one that you were looking at that will show you what communities have vacancies, what unit size of vacancies there are, the AMI level attached to those units, and then the rent range that you're looking at for those units as well. With Parkview in particular, the AMI bracket is the 60 to 80%. So you'll see this range instead of that fixed number. I can let Ileana explain that more closely, but we have flexibility at Parkview to offer rental units to folks who are making up to 80% of the AMI or 60% of the AMI. So it can depend on your individual situation, which rent that you are looking at. That's why you see that range. Again, that's also why we always encourage reaching out to the leasing team directly and asking them about your own individual situation, because they can get you the most specific and personal information back. So
Yeah,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, Kayla. I
No,
just
you're
wanted
fine.
to add on to that. The rents are fixed at 60%. But we are allowing, as you mentioned, yes, very simply said, we are qualifying folks under either 60 or 80 to I guess allow that space to earn 80% allowable income and receive the 60% rents. So that's kind of what we have uniqueness at Parkview going on.
Thanks, Ileana. It definitely is. It's a flexibility support at Parkview for those folks who may be in between the 60 to 80% AMI level. That can be, complicated at some of our other communities, and so we're glad to be able to provide that flexibility at Parkview. So what should I do next? If after all of this, you are thinking, I'm ready to go, I want to start to make my move, or I need a few months to get ready, but this is something that I'm building towards. We say that first, make sure that you can secure documentation of all of your income sources, or know how you would get that documentation if you needed to, as well as all other important family records. We know that a lot of times in the lease-up process, getting this documentation can be one of the biggest time blocks in the process. So if you know where you would find that documentation ahead of time, it can greatly speed things up. Work on your credit score if applicable. So if there is something like a medical debt or something that has really hurt your credit score, and there are resources available to you to help mitigate some of that damage, we highly recommend you seek those out. There are a lot of agencies out there that provide this support across the region. I have 3 listed here because we work with these folks in our home ownership program with AHDC, but they are by no means who you are limited to working with. But Latino Economic Development Center, First Home Alliance, and Centro de Apoyo Familiar all offer credit counseling services, credit rebuilding services, and like I said, also move into the homeownership space as well. So if that's something you're interested in talking about, they would like to work with you to help understand your individual family financial picture and how to build towards that goal. Also reach out to the properties to ask about vacancies, or add your name to our looking to rent email list. Again, at the end of this webinar, I will send all of that information out to everybody who registered. So you'll be able to see how to get to that list, add your name to it. All these LADC, First Home Alliance, Centro de Apoyo Familiar will have their website information as well. But if you want to take a screenshot of the page, I'm not going to stop you either. Then if a unit is available and you are ready to move, you should reach out to the leasing team and schedule a tour to take a look at that unit. If you want to lease that unit, you'll follow up with the leasing team to provide your income documentation and fill out the rest of the rental application. The leasing team then sends that completed application packet to the SL Nusbaum compliance officer, who checks it over and determines if you are income qualified and pass the background check. Like I said, in order to prevent fraud in the tax credit program, it is essential that we check that income background very carefully. This is a requirement by the federal government. We have to be sure in order to continue using the benefits that help us build these apartments with lower than market rents. So that part of the process can take some time. If and when you are approved, you'll be asked to sign a lease and set a move-in date. Okay, so I'm going to take a breath here. I'm going to find a cough drop. I'm going to pass it over to Ileana, who will do a virtual tour of Parkview to kind of show you one of our communities that currently has available units, and hopefully, if you have any questions about the lease-up process or questions about our units, this can help you find those questions or think about what that process might look like. So Ileana, I'll keep moving the slides, but I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Kayla. And then everyone who's asking questions, I definitely will get back to them. They are pretty leasing office geared, so I will answer your questions. But yes, this is our beautiful park view. It is located right in the heart of Alexandria. So it's very, very local to many shops, a shopping center, a mom's organic market. There is, gas stations all around here. And in the center that you see here, that is our entry to our leasing office area. So as soon as you walk in, you would see, it looks a little bit different than now, but you would see our front desk leasing agent, who is Carla Vasquez, and she's amazing. Inside the actual space of the office, I have Mr. Tesfaye Mercuria, who is my assistant manager, and then I am the community manager for this, and that is where you would enter in our building, and you would find us right at the entrance point. There are gates access to get inside of the actual community. So it is, excuse me, fob controlled. And as you can tell, yes, as she's Kayla circling on there, there's an access point scanner on Mount Vernon side of the street. There's also scanners. I can't see it in the picture, but there's another scanner on the Nota Bene side of the road. Next slide. This area is our patio area. We currently are doing some upgrades to it. Ever since taking over, we've noticed a couple of items needing some TLC. But this is an area where our residents can lounge, use it at any moment in time. You can reserve it for any kind of events if you like. It's just a lounge area. It's just a nice amenity for folks, especially in the summertime. It is an open concept space, so it's all that you see around there is actually not windows, those are screens. So you can actually be outside, feel while being inside in this amenity. Here we have our fitness room. We do have several equipment in that fitness room. As you can see, we have elliptical. We do have 2 treadmills in there. The press that you see there, we also have several different weighted dumbbells as well for any weight or resistance training. It is controlled also by fob access, so you do need to enter it through your fob key. And there are entertainment stations in there, television, and I believe a water station as well. Now this is our model unit. This is a 2-bedroom model that we do currently have. You are welcome to come by, and when we take you on the tour, this is actually one of our stops as well. So you see here, this is actually facing the north side of the city. This would be facing like DC, and the view, the higher the building you go, the more amazing the view is. It's actually incredible. So I love taking a break up there for like 5 minutes and just take a breath in and look around to see our community, and it's beautiful. Now, this is also the living space of the model. This is just to show you kind of how the inside of the apartments would look like. And this is actually how the apartments look like on the inside with the vinyl laminate hardwood flooring. We do have the gray and white concept of the doors and the frames. Not all kitchen countertops do have granite, but they are this bar top area that you see here on the left is primarily found in all the apartments, majority stainless steel appliances. There are no dishwashers and no garbage disposals on our property. I do believe I saw that as a question, but what we do have in its place is a combo washer and dryer. There is a laundry room on every floor, but then, this is what, we've added in place of a dishwasher is the washer and dryer combo. And it is in the kitchen, but it's worked fabulously. You know, a lot of our tenants really enjoy this feature. As you can see there, the microwave and stove top are combo as well, but the microwave is all touch. That is the actual, it looks like a hood, just a regular hood, but that is the actual microwave at the top of the stove. All of our stoves here are electric, powered by electricity, and no gas. Excuse me, by gas. So you do have that feature as well in the apartments. This is one of our 1 bedrooms, in the model as well. This is just the size of a bedroom. Typically, you would have about a dresser and a queen size bed in this particular bedroom. We do have also a closet space that you cannot see there. Bathroom, all apartments here are actually 1 bath, 1 full bathroom, including our 2 bedrooms. But this is just standard. You know, you have your shower rods, the vanity there in the center. Beautiful, beautiful. This is the view that I was mentioning to you all. It is fabulous from the from the model. I seriously stand up there for 5-10 minutes, and I truthfully, it takes my all the weight off my shoulders.
Yeah, I wanted to end on the view as well, because when I took my first tour of Parkview, that is exactly what I did. When I left, I kind of just stood by the window and I took a photo and I sent it to my husband. I was like, look at this.
Yeah.
That does not do it justice.
Incredible. It is. It
Very good.
really doesn't. It's a very, very nice view, and even on the opposite side of the building as well, you can see the communities. You know, it's just a thriving area, and it looks so nice. And right now in the fall, especially, like this is as you said, Kayla, not doing justice right now. I mean, we're at peak season right now with the fall, and the leaves look amazing. Autumn looks so good. I did have, or I see some questions that did come in while I was giving my spiel. Kathleen, I did want to answer your question first regarding water garbage disposal. So there are no garbage disposals in the apartment, but utilities are charged separately. So everything at Parkview specifically is paid out by a sub-meter company. And essentially what they'll do is they'll take the number of occupants in the home, and then they'll also take the metered usage of electricity, you know, heat or AC, the water, so and sewage. They'll all take that into kind of like a median amount, and then they'll bill based off of that information. It is kind of split throughout their property. But still metered, the electricity is definitely metered individually. And this is true primarily for Parkview, and as far as like paying for utilities separately is also going to be, you know, similar across the board with all the other communities as well under AHDC. So at least to some capacity, utilities are paid. I know that for example, at the Longview Lacey Court, that's an actual scattered site community. So there are about 4 different apartment complexes being managed by one office. But the majority of those apartments as well pay for electricity, but not water, for example. So those are just kind of the differences there, but not too much of a difference. Jack, you asked, I wanted to know, are you affiliated with any cooperative apartment? I think Kayla, maybe you have an answer to this question for Jack.
I do. AHDC is not affiliated with any cooperative apartments in the city of Alexandria. You know, I think there's the Arlandria Chiralagua Co-op that's very close to Parkview, but that is not owned by us.
And then Rachel, you also had a question of, do you have any units that have 2 baths? We unfortunately, at Parkview, we do not. So at this very moment in time, it's just the 1 full bath. But I think especially in the 2-bedroom, I mean, considering Parkview is one of the, it's been here for quite some time. So it is about 60 years old. However, the updates that we have been making slowly but surely, of course, have revitalized the community quite a bit. And especially, renovating the units on the inside as well. But having just that one bathroom, and even in a 2-bedroom space, the square footage and spaces of these apartments are unlike anything else in the area. I will say that, these are pretty spacious apartments. I believe the square footage is anywhere between 900 to 1,000. So, you're getting a lot of space in the apartment to kind of utilize to your advantage. The square footage, Kathleen, for a 1-bedroom is going to be anywhere between roughly 600 to 700 square footage. And this is our time to have any additional questions and answers. I'll be happy to help. And if you all want to, you're welcome, Kathleen. And if you all wanted to also unmute yourselves, or we can allow you to talk, Kayla, the feature for Zoom, if you all wanted to kind of make a comment or what have you. But our communities are all wonderful places, and we offer great service.
So I agree. I wanted to start, there were a few other questions in the Q&A, and then we will take Q&A questions if they come in, but these were the pre-submitted Q&A questions as well that we will kind of work our way through. And then we will end either when we make it through the Q&A and there's nothing left. I can stay on a few minutes past 11. I don't want to speak for Ileana, but we'll try to work our way through what's here. So
no worries. Ooh, we have questions coming in. Rachel, Teraya, thank you. I'll start with Rachel's question. Rachel, thank you. I'm interested in affordable purchase as well. Will there be any future Zooms on purchasing?
I can take that one. Yeah, so AHDC is really excited about our upcoming homeownership opportunities. We currently have planned homeownership offerings off of Seminary Road, kind of near Francis Hammond Middle School, which we think that we will be starting sales on that at the end of 2023. Kind of just depends on the construction situation at the moment. We also plan homeownership opportunities in Alexandria, Chiralagua that would be closer to 2025 or 2026. We are currently in the process of scheduling and figuring out kind of our public outreach about the Seminary Road location in particular. Information about that will be coming, I think, in January, but maybe sooner, maybe a little later. Again, it's the construction situation. It's very hard to predict and work around. That being said, if you go to our website, housingalexandria.org/homeownership, you can find it. If you navigate at the top of the screen, I'll put it in the follow-up to this email as well. We did a Zoom webinar in March of this year, March 2022, that talked about all of the different homeownership resources that are available, what the city offers, what the state offers. We had folks from the city and the state participating in that call, and folks from the homeownership counseling agencies that we mentioned as well were on that call. So if that's something that anybody here is interested in, we highly recommend you check that out. Check out the homeownership webinar recording that we have on our website and the other resources we have on that page, and then add yourself to those interest lists. Again, we will probably be looking at starting that process at the end of 2023, but we want to make sure that as many people as possible have the opportunity. So take a look now and then keep your ears out, because we will blast that news far and wide.
And then thank you, Kayla. Taraya, your question is, are your units only in the 60 to 80% range, or do you offer 50% too? So specifically at Parkview, it's only the 60 to 80 range right now. And this is just for the income qualification purposes. Our rents are at the current 60% AMI. Those are what we're charging as rent, but the qualification on the back end with our compliance department, we're qualifying folks up to 80% AMI.
And then within the AHDC portfolio, we do have other communities that have 40% and 50% units. I believe the Bloom has both. I know it has 40. I think it also has 50%. The Nexus has 40. I don't think it has 50. I think it just has 40%. Lacey Court has 40% units.
And 50.
And 50% units. Thank
and
you.
50 and 60. Yes.
So yes, within the AHDC portfolio, we do have 40 and 50% units. In our other communities, I just can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but I can try to get that information out in the follow-up.
Rachel, you said one more. Is there a way to get out of a current lease to become eligible for an affordable unit through AHDC? Now that is, I will say, just being in the management office and on just the leasing side of things, I would recommend that you speak to your leasing office directly wherever you currently live to find out what these what the stipulations might be to break a lease, if you will, if you're currently in one, or what is their policy on move outs or early move outs. So typically that's also found in your lease. Maybe you can obtain a copy and kind of read over it, but they are going to be the best source for that that question.
Great, thank you.
I can also continue with the questions here.
Let's start working through them, and if we see any come in live, I think we can pop over there too.
Sure. Why do we use gross income and not net? This is actually a really good question, and sometimes I have to remind myself what compliance, the reasoning for it. There is a reason why gross is used and not net, but essentially it's because we want to capture the highest. Just because of a compliance perspective, we have to capture the highest amount that you will earn. And again, I say you will, right? Because no one can really know. Not even employers can. No one, I believe, cannot detect what will happen in the future, right? So, the reason we use the gross is because we try to go for the highest number possible, right? Kayla mentioned earlier, and in the slides earlier, that we look at maximum and minimum income, right? But maximum is actually the most crucial thing. Is if you're ever labeled as an over income household at some point after you've moved in, and there's a compliance audit made, and a compliance officer notices that there was just extra income that we didn't catch once you applied, then that would unfortunately be resulting in an eviction. We would ask for you to leave simply because you supersede the income limits of the program. Now, that's the only reason why we use gross. And to be very honest, it's just to make sure that you fully, to the full extent, qualify for the program, and you are not at that max level, that you're under that max level income.
It's always to avoid evictions. And so we want to make sure that it doesn't sneak up on anybody. We want to make sure that nobody, if we qualify at net and then your gross shows that you're over, like that's the worst. That's the situation we don't want to be in.
Exactly. The question number 2 says, how do you mitigate against bias in the selection process? Well, fair housing law. This is exactly how we mitigate against bias. We, first and foremost, right, we're all human beings, we treat everyone with respect, with courtesy. Of course, first and foremost, that's just a personal policy of mine, just ethically. We don't treat anyone differently, and we don't also place anyone above any other applicant, tenant, prospect, what have you. Everyone is treated the same, and so I think that's how we mitigate against bias in the selection process and we also have our resident selection criteria, which defines the and I think Kathleen, I believe you asked this question earlier in our panel, but our resident selection criteria tells you exactly what the credit model we use, what it looks for on your profile for your credit. and or your criminal background check. So I don't have it. So it's very lengthy, very extensive. I do invite every single one of you, if you are interested at all, to come and meet us in person, or come to the offices. I invite you to come to Parkview, and I will be more than happy to show you our resident selection criteria, and or any one of us. But we do have that in place to also help us with the selection of who can live there and who cannot. So ultimately, we have all these tools, in place to ensure that everyone is, run through the same process, and there's no differences between one person or the other.
I just want to add with
Yeah.
when we have those new communities that we do those wait lists that I was talking about earlier, we take it very seriously there as well. We want to avoid any unintentional, certainly intentional bias, but we also very much know that unintentional bias can sneak into the process. So that's why we do the randomized waitlist and lottery process. It's done by a computer program. Every application that comes in is assigned the number that it came in, and then we just shuffle the list. So there's no preferencing, there's no other criteria that determines who goes first versus second versus last in the randomized waitlist process for those new communities. We know that sometimes like algorithms and things can shake stuff up if you try to get too in the weeds with it. So that is why we prefer that randomized lottery system.
Do you offer senior housing for SL Nusbaum? We don't particularly have any under AHDC, but then Kayla, I don't think so.
Yeah. No, we don't have any senior housing, and we know it's a need in the community. We know that there are a few senior housing communities that are affordable, that are provided by ARHA. There's Claridge House, there's Annie B. Rose, and a few others. But no, those are not offered by us. Not that we won't in the future at some point, but right now AHDC does not have senior housing.
Sorry, we did have a question come in from Karima. Hi. Is the Waypoint a Nusbaum property?
I think that Wesley Housing.
Okay.
And so Wesley Housing is the nonprofit that owns and operates that. They're a nonprofit just like we are. I don't know who they use for their leasing services. But yeah, it might be
Wesley. I think Wesley is a management company, I believe, Kayla.
That's right.
So I'm not familiar with the name of the community. I can find out. Karima.
Yeah. No,
find out.
They Waypoint, I believe that's the Waypoint at Fairlington, which is the new community that went up in partnership with the church. And that, yeah, if it's Wesley Housing, they are their own management company as well, but they are a nonprofit and it is a tax credit property. So a lot of the information here is very similar to what you'd find with them.
And then the next question we have, what about SSI and disability income? We do take it into account when we're calculating for your income. But sometimes just given, given the trend in the benefit amounts, typically just that alone won't suffice for meeting the qualification minimum income for the households.
I think Ileana has someone with her, so I'll take over for a second. How long are waiting lists, and why haven't you told you've been added after all documentation has been submitted? So again, with our communities, existing communities, we don't typically operate waiting lists. So if this might be in reference to ARHA or a different provider, and for that, I apologize if this answer is not particularly helpful. With our new communities, when we do these initial wait lists that I've mentioned before, typically speaking, if we have about 100 units, we receive about 1,500 applicants in the wait list period, and we almost always go through the entire wait list, and that process takes about 3 months. Usually at the end of that new lease up process, we'll kind of open back up the wait list or start publicly advertising units depending on the situation. 3 to 4 months, the team at Nusbaum moves as quick as they can, and they're fast as lightning. But it can just, if you have to call 1,500 people on the phone, it takes time. And then once we exhaust that initial lease up period, the wait list is dissolved. If you add your name to our email list for the looking to rent snapshot once a month, that is not a wait list. And if somebody says AHDC asks you to upload paperwork, go ahead and shoot me an email, because if you're just putting your name on the looking to rent list, you shouldn't have to provide any income documentation at that point. I see there's a hand raised, so I'm going to allow Rosalind to talk on open mic. Hi, Rosalind. You are muted, but you should be able to unmute yourself if you'd like.
Okay, thank you.
Hmm?
I just wanted to know if you're eligible to lease there and you actually become a member of one of your communities based on your income, and you're still, upwardly mobile, trying to increase your income. And let's say you're on a lease and then you obtain employment where your income puts you over the maximum income limits. How would you handle a situation like that?
So this is a me question. I'm sorry, Kayla, I did have an interruption. I do apologize, everyone.
You're fine.
The income is only counted once you move in or move in at the application time. Once you've moved in at that point, at recertification is when we will reevaluate the income. However, just given how these, Kayla, just as you mentioned earlier about the participation with the tax credit program, just the way that, on the back end, our ownership, AHDC, has their agreements with the IRS, their folks are able to basically make as much as they like after moving in, simply because the program allows that space for you to get that promotion if you get it. Of course, we're humans, right? Like, as I mentioned, progress is everything. So it was made so that this program was flexible enough to, once you're in the program and you're living there as an established tenant, that you are able to continue growing in your profession, or even the vice versa. Even if you lose your job, you also don't run into, we would have to determine in our leasing office whether or not you could continue to live there simply by, your income. If you happen to lose your job, but you have some sort of money coming in just to help you partially with rent or what have you, we work with that case by case.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rosalind. And I'll also add that, the maximum income, those tables and those numbers, they update every April. And so it might be that the maximum income grows with you. And so it's part of the reason why we need to reevaluate at that moment in time. As just a brief example, the current the 100% AMI for a family of 4 is $142,000 right now. When I started working at AHDC, it was $99,000. So in the span of just 5 years, it's grown by $50,000. So that max income also shifts along with your own income. It's that individual case by case basis, and the leasing team can work with you to help make sure that we are all moving in the same direction.
Thank you. That's a great question, by the way, and I appreciate you asking that question, Rosalind.
I have a hand raised from Betty Green. So Betty, you should have the ability to unmute yourself now.
Hi. Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So throughout the whole thing, I wanted to add information and chat. My chat was disabled and everything. I actually have a couple questions, but I was just wondering, is there a number? Is there something I can follow up on in like 5 minutes after you conclude? Only because I had these questions in the beginning and I wasn't actually able to chime in.
Yeah. So I will follow up with information out there with the slides and the question and answers over the course of the next week. You also should have received, I believe Zoom does it, but you should have received a reminder from communications@housingalexandria.org about this session. That's me, I operate that inbox. So if you
Yeah.
wanted to email questions there, we can start to sort through any questions that you had that you were unable to get submitted.
Okay. Yeah, but one of the quick questions I had, because I'm looking to move in probably the next 5 or 6 months, and I'm just wondering if it's a little too soon. I just want to do my due diligence and not wait until, too late. So at this stage, I was just wondering, what would one do when you're looking, 5 to 6 months from now? Is it a little too soon to get an information, or?
Ileana, you might have better information than I do on kind of the notice to vacate period.
No worries. Yeah. Betty, thank you for that question. We
Sure.
actually, so I wouldn't necessarily say it's too soon or like too far out, too in advance to start preparing
Yeah.
yourself for these things. It's the better you know, or the more you know, the better you can prepare yourself for when it's time to apply. And essentially though, we currently require all of our current tenants at our properties to give us, and this is just a Nusbaum, requirement, of course, it's in the lease. But we ask all of our tenants to give us at least a 60 days notice prior to them moving out. So we at least know 2 months in advance what we'll have available for, 2 months after. So right now, even, considering 5 to 6 months out, we really wouldn't know what will be available by that time frame. But we could definitely prepare you with all of the information you do need to know for when that time comes and you'd be ready.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Betty. And, just for everybody else in the room too, if you have questions that come up later or that you weren't able to get off during the meeting, if you shoot them to communications@housingalexandria.org and the same email that you're going to receive follow-up information from. I'm the one who mans that email inbox most days of the week if my daughter doesn't have the flu. So those questions do come to me, and I will do my best to get you answers, probably during the work week, given the situation of the plague in our home. But thank you, Betty.
Oh, sure.
I have a hand raised from Mohammed. So Mohammed, you should be able to unmute yourself right now. Ileana, I also don't want to presuppose on your time. If you have to jump, I can try to handle questions. But I think
Okay.
I'll put a hard stop at 11:20. So if you have question for myself at 11:20. So if you have questions, we do submit them into Q&A, get them into our email inbox or the chat program here. And when we provide these follow-up materials, we'll make sure that all of those questions are answered as well.
Yes, I do have to jump, and I really appreciate everyone's time. What I'll do real quick before I leave is leave in the chat box the number and the address for Parkview. Please come by and see me, see Carla, or see Tesbe. We're all there, and we'll be happy to assist you with whatever questions you may have.
Thanks, Ileana. I really appreciate your time. Ileana is fantastic, and I highly recommend that you go see the folks over there at Parkview. They are extremely helpful. But unfortunately, now you're stuck with me. So thank you, Kathleen, for my daughter. I hope she feels better soon too. I'm going to work my way through the rest of the list. Mohammed, I think you have now unmuted yourself. So if you want to go ahead and ask your question. I'm not getting you though. Let's see if, all right, Ileana left a message in the chat. Mohammed, if you're able to get your question, maybe you're able to talk at this point. We'll wait for you, but if it's not working, if you get your question in the chat, we'll do our best to answer it there too. While Mohammed works on tech issues, I'm just going to go ahead and move on to this next question. I would like to know, are these tax credit apartments? Yes, they are. So this is, we have a video on our website that I can provide in the follow-up materials that explains it. If you have heard that these might be called tax credit communities or tax credit apartments, this is because it's part of the low-income housing tax credit program. That is a program established by the federal government to help the construction of affordable communities. And it comes with a very specific set of rules that govern the incomes, the maximums, the rents, and that sort of thing. And so sometimes within the community of housing providers, we'll kind of use it as shorthand to say, this is a tax credit community, and that explains the, to those of us within the community, it explains a lot about it. You know, and unfortunately, sometimes that jargon and that shorthand kind of sneaks its way into the community, and people aren't necessarily sure of what that means. So yes, these are tax credit apartments because they're part of the low income housing tax credit program. With the few communities that AHDC has that aren't part of the low income housing tax credit program, like if it didn't use that source of funds, we still apply these same rules in order to, with question number 2, mitigate against bias in the selection process, establish, you know, a record by which we evaluate income, have this resident selection criteria. You know, we use the same rules just to keep it simple across the community. You know, a few of our communities don't use tax credit funding in order to become constructed. We might still call it a tax credit apartment just to help explain the rules and things that are involved. Mohammed, I'm going to check back in with you. Have you figured out your microphone? All right, I'll move on to the next question. Mohammed, just holler at me if you're there. Will I receive HCV, housing choice voucher, or Section 8 with these apartments? No, the housing choice voucher and the Section 8 program are administered by ARHA, the Alexandria Redevelopment Housing Authority. That is a public program, city, state, federal involvement, LinkedIn, and we are the independent housing nonprofit. We don't administer that program. However, if you do have those resources, we do accept them to help pay your rent. That's part of that fair housing law, that source of funds cannot be used as a way to discriminate into or out of a program. We accept and are very familiar with Section 8 and housing choice vouchers. We just don't administer that program. Oh, I copy pasted the same question twice. My apologies. How long does it take to get a unit? You know, the amount of time it takes to move into a unit after you've indicated that you're interested is variable, and it depends largely on the thoroughness of your documentation. You know, if the compliance team is able to look at your application packet and see a very thorough and complete picture of what your income looks like, you know, that process can move within 1 business week, sometimes up to 2 business weeks, just depending on what resources they have to check, particularly if you have kind of non-traditional sources of income, you know, funds received from a neighbor to pay for babysitting, that sort of thing. It can take a little bit longer. It's when the application doesn't have the correct documentation or it doesn't have robust enough documentation that the process does get slowed down. So, you know, in the event that you want to move in and you're looking at this in your future, that's why we really recommend understanding and knowing where all of your documentation is going to come from, and having those resources available to you upfront can really shorten the length of the process. Now, with one of those communities that if we are leasing it up for the first time and we are doing that waitlist process, how long it can take to get a unit sometimes depends on the construction. With the Bloom, for example, in 2020 it opened. We were all dealing with the pandemic and the issues that caused in the construction industry. We were hoping to move folks in October. It didn't happen until December because like wood was hard to find, steel was hard to find, so we had to slow down our process a little bit. Typically, once we are fully up and running with a wait list, it takes about 3 to 4 months for the leasing team to clear through the wait list. And usually there's some remaining units after the fact as well. So if it's a brand new community, you know, 3 to 4 months or so, but otherwise the speed at which it moves largely depends on your ability to get the documentation in line. Do you offer rental assistance? So AHDC is a nonprofit housing provider. You know, it is our mission that we help people stay in their units. We don't routinely offer rental assistance, but in the event that you are facing, you know, unplanned for circumstances, we're going to do everything in our power to help make sure that you can stay. So we have developed relationships with City Office of Housing, Department of Community and Human Services. Churches in Alexandria have a very robust, it's the faith-based financial providers network. They every month provide, you know, money to help support folks who are in an emergency situation, help get them through that situation. We're very familiar with that network and we work with them all the time. So we have these connections and these resources in the community that if we have a resident that's facing a hard time, we're going to pull out all those connections and work to keep you stably housed. One other program that we do offer, we have partnered with a company called Isusu, that's ESUSU. And they do two things for us. One thing is that they have a 0 interest loan program for emergency rental situations. So they can provide up to 3 months of your rent upfront at a 0 interest loan, which you then have, I believe the term of repayment is 12 months. Do not quote me on that. The leasing team has more information, but you're given the ability to repay that amount that you request over time, again, at a 0 interest rate. So if you have, a sudden car repair that comes up, they can help you make the rent up front, and then you can work to pay the loan back over a period of time. This applies to some situations phenomenally well and others, not as well. So if it makes more sense to go to the faith-based providers network, we encourage you to do that. And AHDC has a resident services team that will help address those individual situations as they come up. In addition to the folks at SL Nusbaum, they're very well connected to these networks too, and can help move you in the right direction. The other thing that I want to highlight that we're really excited about with Isusu is they are also a credit reporting agency. So if you may or may not be familiar, but when you have a mortgage and you pay your mortgage, every month, that gets reported to credit bureaus. And so routinely paying your mortgage improves your credit score. However, this is not routinely provided amongst rental communities, even though it's the same amount of money that you're paying on the same monthly basis. And so we think that that is an equity issue. We think that's unfair to renters. And so we've partnered with Isusu to report the rent that you pay. So when you pay on-time rent in an AHDC community, that helps build your credit score. Isusu runs that program for us, and that's how we get connection to this eviction prevention, this emergency loan assistance that they offer as well. But this credit reporting, in the 9 months that it has been a part of the AHDC portfolio, we've actually seen our average renter credit score rise. It also has a fail safe. So in the event that you don't pay your rent on time, something happens, an emergency comes up, Isusu stops reporting your credit. They don't report the failure to pay. They stop for 6 months in order for you to move past that emergency and figure out kind of what resources work best for you to help get you back on track. And then after that period of time, you can connect back with Isusu and ask if you would like the credit reporting to begin again. So again, we're very excited about this. I mentioned earlier, we have this home ownership program that's coming up. We know that credit is such a big part of this conversation. And so we want to help our renters be able to build their credit by doing the exact same thing that mortgage payers do as well. This program is also opt-in, opt-out. So in the event that you don't want to participate for any reason, it is not a requirement as being part of an AHDC community. So at this moment, it's 11:20. I don't see any additional questions, and I've kind of gone through all of my pre-submitted ones. Let me double check. No, I don't see any more here. So end of slideshow. I don't have my email here. I'm so sorry about that. Like I said, I'm going to be reaching back out with resources and information that was covered in this presentation and the follow-up materials we said we'd have. You'll have my email address that way. Please reach out and let us know. I'll have Ileana's email address in there too. If you have any follow-up questions that you would like to have answered, it is me who mans that inbox. So I will work on getting that information out over the course of the next week as we're able to address it. Likewise, you can always go visit one of our properties. The Parkview leasing team is extraordinarily helpful. And Ileana mentioned that you were part of this webinar, and Ileana will definitely be able to help connect you to any sort of questions that came up here or help address anything further. Any of our other leasing offices as well within the AHDC portfolio are very open to receiving questions and want to help kind of navigate what this complicated topic can be. So I have one hand raised from Jack, and I'll take this as our last question. So Jack, you should be able to unmute yourself. Are you there, Jack?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Hi, there you are. Yes.
Hi, sweetie. How are you? Thank you for a fabulous presentation.
Oh, thank you so much.
Very clear and very simple. I just want to know if you have any up and coming projects that are under construction as of right now.
Yeah, so we have no currently shovels in the ground projects. We have 2 that are finishing the pre-development financing stage of the work. This is the Seminary Road homeownership development that I mentioned, that we believe homeownership sales will begin in 2023. We believe that construction will begin winter 2023. We think January. As soon as we can really put dates and details on that, we're going to be sharing it widely. Like I said, it's just finding construction teams is part of the challenge of post-pandemic. So we're working through it. The other development that we have still in the pre-development financing stage is in Arlandria Chirrigagua at Mount Vernon and Glebe. So this is a community that will have 414 rental units and 58 home ownership units. So that will be, we anticipate a groundbreaking on that sometime in summer 2023, very loosely. Again, once we have more information, we will share them broadly. We're very excited about it. We want to be clear about our timelines and help people get prepared and get ready. So we believe we'll be shovels in the ground in 2023. We'll be working on the garage, and we think that we can start move-ins for that at the end of 2024, but if not, definitely in 2025.
Thank you so much, sweetie.
Yeah,
Have
of
an
course.
amazing day, and I hope your daughter feels better.
Thank you so much. I do too. Her dad is messaging me all sorts of information about her current status. Apparently it's very mucusy down there. So I appreciate it very kindly. Let me see. I've hidden my Q&A box. Thank you, Rachel. I appreciate the feedback as well. So again, anything that we didn't get to and anything that you can think of later, just shoot it to us in an email and we'll work on getting those answers to you over the course of the next week. Otherwise, I hope you all have a lovely, beautiful, gorgeous Saturday, and we hope to talk to you soon.